Alrighty, here is my little lecture on DNA analysis. Mainly, it's just DNA fun facts and then how that kind of is used in crime scene labs and how it's all done. Yeah, it's quite fascinating actually, especially all the DNA little fun facts. So, I guess we'll just start. DNA is a nucleic acid formed from the repetition of what is commonly known as like the simple building blocks of life, or nucleotide, I think it's called. This contains of a phosphate, some sugar, yum, and a nitrogen base. There's about 5 types of bases: adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine, and uracil. The first 4 are DNA, more commonly found in DNA, and then the last one, uracil, is more found in like RNA. Fun fact about DNA, another fun fact, is when DNA in one cell is stretched out, it's about like 6.5 feet. But if you take all of the total DNA from all the cells, it's about 10 to 20 billion miles long, which I think means you can stretch to the sun and back just with the DNA in one person's body. That's pretty crazy. Next, we've got the genome, and it's kind of like the genetic material of a human being. It contains like these instructions that allow an organism to maintain and function life. Yeah, so genome is pretty important. Each species has its own different type of genome. So the genome found in a warthog will not be found in a human being, and if it is, be concerned. Genomes are divided into chromosomes, and chromosomes continue the organism's genes, and then genes are composed of DNA, so it's like a little sequence thing going on. Jeez Louise. A chromosome is like a thread like part of the cell that contains DNA. And its job is to kind of like carry genetic material to the cell. It's like an elevator. That's how what my mind thought of. The body contains about 50 to 100 trillion chromosomes, and then each chromosome, trillion cells. 50 to 100 trillion cells, and each cell contains about 46 chromosomes. Largest chromosome carries about 8,000 genes, and then the smallest chromosome contains less than 300. Yeah. Genes are complex protein molecules that are associated with chromosomes, as we just mentioned. They act as like a unit, or they act in certain biochemical combinations. I'm blanking. What was I saying? Yeah, they kind of, I guess, like carry out the transmissions of like characteristics passed down from parents to their offspring or their kid. Genes are kind of what gives you hair, eye color, stuff like that. DNA is not unique to a person. There are 3 million different ways that DNA can be deciphered between people, but 99% of DNA is the same. And so, I don't know. Like, there are a lot of ways to decipher, but it is very specific, because 1% of DNA being something that's able to be deciphered is, yeah, very specific. Yeah, about 2% of DNA contains what creates characteristics in a person. So again, hair, eyes, stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of the make of DNA, the fun facts. In terms of sources for DNA, for crime scene analyzing, the best is blood, but only the white cells. The white cells have a nucleus, and the red blood cells don't. Yeah. Sperm heads are also really good, but more so for sexual assaults than anything, obviously. Saliva also contains DNA, and hair, as long as the hair follicle is still attached to it, that's good. And then bones and teeth are good sources, or especially in decomposing bodies and skeletal remains. Yeah. In terms of DNA, the reason why it's good for crime scene stuff is because the only people who have identical DNA are twins, and there are a good amount of twins in the world, but I don't know, from what I know, there's not a lot of crimes committed by twins. Although mental illness is like a 50-50 chance if you're a twin. So if your twin has some type of mental illness like ADHD or OCD, it's like 50% plus chance you have it too. Probably because your DNA is identical. Anyways, that's a whole nother rabbit hole I could go down. DNA, if collected and stored in elite conditions, can last 4 to 14 days, and then DNA and skeletal remains can last so much longer. I think some scientists think it can last for up to like 565 years. I mean, they're able to figure out who the remains belong to of people from hundreds of years ago, so I don't really doubt that. I can easily believe it. DNA that can be found at certain crime scenes for body fluids are like blood, urine, feces, semen, saliva, and sweat, which can be found in a numerous amount of items or on a numerous amount of things. And then biological tissues are like skin tissues and cells, hair, teeth, and bones. I think those are a little more complicated to try and extract DNA from. I could be wrong. This is a lecture, so I'm right. Yeah, crime scene items that have DNA commonly on them are like hats, mats, masks, gloves, clothing, then obviously tools, weapons, cups, bottles, probably the window if it was 4th century, or the door. If you can find like glasses, jewelry, or tissues, you'd be lucky. But if you could find that, there's probably some biological tissue DNA on there. Um, Next will be reference samples. Reference samples are samples that are on file already. Those are files from people who've already previously been arrested. Um, yeah, previously arrested. So they'll usually check a DNA file if they find DNA from a crime scene that might belong to a suspect. And then there's elimination samples, which are typically from consenting sexual partners, or I guess partners in general, and people who are also working the scene. That way, the DNA found on the scene can be referenced with the DNA from the elimination samples, which exclude them from being potential suspects. Yeah, next I'll touch on low-level DNA. Forensic DNA analysis, goodness gracious, that word, often begins with something called like low-level DNA or touch DNA. This is the DNA that is left behind when a person touches an object, something like skin cells can provide enough DNA to make an identification. So when a suspect touches anything at a crime scene, if you can find the skin cells, that can be extremely useful. Even if there's like 8 or something cells, which is obvious, it's so crazy. I think it's insane that we've come as far as like you can find 8 skin cells and use that to make identification. But I kind of see this as like it's a lot harder to find this and analyze this. Yeah, you have to be pretty skilled in order to make an identification through low-level DNA and touch DNA. Yeah. Trying to think of what else. Low template DNA or low copy number DNA. This DNA is, I don't know, it's kind of the same as low level DNA. It's just really small it's small samples, but could also be degraded or mixed with DNA from multiple people, which obviously is a kerfuffle and a half. But like, say you have a case where like there's multiple suspects, or a victim was touched by multiple people, the DNA might contain traces from all these people, and then there's super advanced techniques that are then used in order to amplify the DNA, which then would make it readable, but that's tricky. And it might not be perfect. Yeah. Yeah, that's all for that. Rapid DNA testing. Rapid DNA testing. It can read a suspect's data in about 90 minutes. It can be a game changer. I think this is cool. Like technology, the way it's come, we can just connect to the databases within 90 minutes. Although it still takes a while sometimes because it takes about like 2 weeks to 6 months to analyze some data because you have to go through this process of like you extract DNA from the cell. No, you determine if the sample is valid. You extract DNA from the cell. Chemical solutions are then used to isolate the DNA. 3, you then do like quantification, quantitation, and amplification. 4, separation and detection, and then finally like analysis, goodness, that word, interpretation, and quality assurance, which is just basically like referring it to other samples found from what you think is the same suspect to each other. So you do the 2 samples and make sure they match quality assurance. This takes like 2 weeks to 6 months. And so like with the rapid DNA thing I was just talking about, I don't know, that's why I thought I was a little confused, because how can they do it in 90 minutes, but then apparently it takes 2 weeks to 6 months. Anyways, yeah. Then there's DNA profiling and DNA phenotyping. First, DNA profiling is fingerprinting. It's been around for decades. It's kind of like the backbone of DNA analysis. It involves looking... It's like short tandem repeats, because they're very highly variable between individuals. Yeah, it's like basically the swirly things. The swirly things like are very specific to a person, and then you have DNA phenotyping, which basically predicts a person's physical traits such as hair and eye color based on their DNA. So I guess kind of looking at that 2% of the DNA that is the 2% of genes that relates to the hair color and stuff like that, and eye color, which is helpful because potentially you don't really know a suspect, but you can predict what their hair and eye color can be, which I guess limits it down to like who it could be. Allow you to make more of an educated guess on what could possibly be the person who did it. Yeah. What else? Yeah, so there's DNA databases like CODIS. These are the ones that are maintained by the FBI. CODIS is basically where they keep all the DNA, and they match the DNA found to any potential offenders or even missing persons, like to see if there's a match to the DNA, or like with figuring out the phenotyping, where it's like it can help predict a person's hair color or eye color, and then you look at all the missing persons and you see which ones have that, and who knows, it might help. But yeah, the system works at 3 levels. It's LIDIS, LDIS, which is the local DNA index system, so local labs. The SDIS, which is like the state DNA index system, and then the NDIS, which is the national DNA index system for federal level labs. CODIS, yeah, has really been great for solving cold cases and, yeah, linking crimes to each other from different jurisdictions. It was implemented in 1998. Yeah. So to conclude, because it's 20 minutes, so I'm already done. Forensic DNA analysis is a very vital tool in solving crimes. It can help people who are innocent be exonerated, or it brings justice to victims and gets the people who actually did the real crime perpetrated. Yeah, with all the advances, like you can read low-level DNA, which is insane. 8 freaking skin cells to determine like who a person is and figure out and solve a crime. Nuts. Rapid result testing, making it so 90 minutes is only how long it takes to match a DNA to a suspect. And then you have things like next generation sequencing. I'm kind of forgetting about that, so I won't go too much on that. Yeah, I think as time advances and things advance, technology advances, things like CODIS will be advanced. And I mean, it's already extremely helpful now, but hopefully it can get to a point where it is almost 100% accurate, or 100% helpful at least, for solving crimes. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be a big part of criminal justice. It already is. Since '98, it has been. For, yeah. I couldn't even imagine, like, before, like, trying to solve crimes when you had no way to see what a person's DNA is, or like any of this detection, like stuff where you can go back, like through the what is it? Yeah, when you split open the cell and extract the DNA, and you make it separate from all the other organic material. Like, I couldn't even imagine. Like that's crazy. It's so crazy to me. And so, just the fact that we're able to do stuff like that now, like, that's so cool. Humans are dope. Hopefully the criminal justice system gets more dope. Criminal justice can do a lot better. DNA, though, and how that's coming along, great. Amazing. Yeah, that's kind of my little spiel on DNA analysis. Thanks for watching.